I am 40 years old. I have multiple bulging discs in my back. I have degenerative disc disease, a surgically repaired shoulder, and a multitude of other things that you would get over 21 years of active duty military service and multiple combat deployments. And right now, I'm actually training for a marathon with the goal of completing an ultra marathon by the end of this year. It's not because I think I'm elite. It's not because I'm chasing some social media highlight reel clout. In fact, if you looked at my social media, you really wouldn't find much on there. It's because I genuinely believe, even at 40, my best days as a runner might not be behind me, but instead ahead of me. This is my running story, from a 5-year-old trying to make his dad proud to where I am today, a 40-year-old rebuilding his body piece by piece. If you ever stopped, quit, gained weight, got injured, or maybe even thought, it's just too late for me, I want you to hear this, and I hope this gives you some hope. My running journey really started with wrestling. My dad was a high school wrestler. My uncle was too. They both went to state. And in our house, wrestling really wasn't just a sport, especially for me. It was a part of our identity. My older brother took a lot more after my mom's side. He was tall, lanky, he was like 6'4". I took a little bit more after my dad. I'm 5'10". I have a decently solid build. I'm not huge, but I'm definitely not tiny. My dad signed me up for Pee Wee wrestling when I was in kindergarten. And he was always there, coaching me, firing me up, yelling encouragement from the side of the mat. And I loved every second of it. I loved wrestling, yes, but I also loved seeing my dad proud of me. One of the things he drilled into me early was this: Tim, if you want to win, you need to outlast them, because endurance wins matches. So what did I do? I started running. I don't remember the mileage and I don't remember the pace. I just remember running was something that I needed to do if I wanted to be a better wrestler. Looking back, maybe I was too young for the amount of running that I was doing. I don't know, but I know it did shape me. Then our family, throughout elementary school, hit some financial hardships. Sports cost a lot of money. Travel cost money. Fees started to add up, and things had to basically stop. And for me, that sadly was sports. For a few years, I stepped away. But then in middle school, when that came around, I went right back into wrestling. I remember what my dad told me: endurance, Tim. So I ran constantly, slow, steady miles. I wasn't the biggest kid, but I did have a growth spurt in 6th grade that shot me up to 5'10", and I basically towered over a lot of the other middle schoolers. But the funny thing is I just kind of stopped growing at that point, and I stayed the exact same height then as I am today. I was skinny, I was lanky, and that really wasn't ideal for wrestling. But I figured out how to use what I had. I remembered my dad's words: endurance wins. So I came up with a simple strategy. I would let other kids burn out, I'd get them worn out and tired out, and then I'd go after them late in matches to either accumulate wins by points or by a pin. Running gave me that edge. In middle school track, I started out as a sprinter. And honestly, this was for the sole reason of getting better at wrestling. And as a sprinter, I was terrible. 100 meters, slow. Hurdles, even worse. I never won anything in any of those sprinting matches. But I didn't care much because, like I said, I only saw track as conditioning for wrestling. Then one day in the 8th grade, I'll never forget this, I missed my 100-meter race because I was goofing around with my friends. My coach was furious. She told me, fine, guess what? You're going to go ahead and run the mile. And I was like, oh my gosh, not the mile. At that time, the mile felt like absolute punishment. I'm like, who are these psycho kids who want to run distance? I lined up, very annoyed. The gun went off, and then boom. After the first lap, I noticed that, hey, I was in first place. And I remember thinking, oh yeah, I definitely went out too fast. But the thing was, I didn't really slow down. I honestly don't remember if I won that race or came in a very close second place. But what I do remember was that feeling. That was the first time I realized, hey, I may not actually be built for speed. I might be built for distance. And then something shifted in me that day. Now enter freshman year of high school, and this was a very humbling time. I was still 100% on board with wrestling with a side love of distance running. In wrestling, I earned a varsity spot at the 140, 142 pound range. Can't really remember right now because it was so long ago, but I quickly learned at that time that there is a very big difference between a 14-year-old freshman boy and an 18-year-old senior man. My first match was over in about 40 seconds. I tried to rely on endurance like I did in middle school, but I was getting manhandled. I finished that entire freshman season around a 50% win rate. But then came track season. I ran the 800, the 1600, the 3200, and the 4x8. I didn't mention, I went to a very small school, so it wasn't hard to get a varsity spot. And if you showed any type of talent, you were going to be doing 4 races in track. As a freshman, I ran around a 10:32 in the 3200 meter, and I actually made it to regionals, one step away from state. And here's the honest truth. I had talent. I didn't realize it at the time until that race was over, but I thought, hey, I can do this. I have the talent. But what I didn't have was the structure. I only trained during the season. I drank 2 to 3 Pepsis a day. No one ever talked to me, even my coaches, about how important nutrition was with running. No one talked about recovery. I didn't think about sleep. All I did was just run when I was supposed to run. So sophomore and junior year, I ended up going and joining the cross country team. I hovered around an 18:30 to 18 flat time range. I was always close, but never quite breaking through. Junior year, I even lost my track season over an academic situation. I stood up for something I believed in because the teacher was shouting some nonsense, but I also let pride cost me something that I loved. And I was essentially kicked off the track team for that junior year. That one hurt. Since I couldn't run track junior year, I decided to do something bold. I signed up for a marathon. Now, mind you, this was 2003. Marathons were not all that popular. In fact, when I ran the Cleveland Marathon in 2003, there were just a little over 900 runners in total. Compare that to 2025, there were over 11,000 runners in that race. That's crazy multiplication because distance running at that time was gaining some traction, but it wasn't nearly what it is today. So I signed up for the Cleveland Marathon. I was 17 years old, and the longest run I did in training was only about 10 miles. That's not an exaggeration. I didn't know anything about fueling during a race. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know about electrolytes. I didn't know about proper hydration beforehand. I didn't even know anything about negative splits. I just knew that 26.2 miles sounded big, and I kind of wanted to slap my school in the face for not letting me run track that year. So enter that race morning, and I felt absolutely invincible. At 17, I can safely say you don't fully respect fatigue. I went through the half part of the race at the half marathon at around a 1:49. Pretty good pace for a 17-year-old. And I remember thinking to myself, hey, this really isn't so bad. Then mile 18 happened, and then 20, and my calf started cramping up, and my quads were starting to cramp up. And as I limped basically across the finish line, my legs were just not working. That empty feeling that I had, basically, I was hitting the wall. My legs were kind of moving, but my gas tank was completely depleted. I slowed down a lot in that second half and finished with a total time of 3 hours, 44 minutes, and 33 seconds. Actually, fifth, surprisingly, in my age group. And when I crossed that finish line, I wasn't thinking about mistakes. I was actually thinking about, hey, I just ran 26.2 miles. And in fact, I still have my medal that I earned that day. And man, I tell you what, I couldn't be more proud of that. Looking back at it, It was reckless, but it showed me something important. It showed me that, hey, I can actually endure. The summer before my senior year, I finally decided to get serious about cross country. I went to cross country camp that summer. Most of my teammates went too. We trained together, we learned together, and we built something together. I cleaned up my diet, I cut the junk, no more 2 to 3 Pepsis a day, and no more garbage junk food. And I actually started understanding that carbs are fuel, protein matters, and hydration matters too. Go figure when you actually get a little bit of coaching under you. So I trained all summer long. Senior season came and I was getting PR after PR. That year, I ran somewhere in the 1720s for that 5K. It wasn't elite, but it was earned. Our team finally also beat our rival school and we won our conference. We made it to state and finished 4th place in Division 4. And I remember seeing my picture in the newspaper that year, and that year taught me something that I didn't fully appreciate then. Discipline multiplies talent. In fact, those were some of the fondest years of my life. I'll just never forget how thankful I am for those times and what an amazing time that was, because this was really, if I had to put a definition on when my love of running started, it was that senior year of cross country. I even got this cool little thing for a Letterman's jacket that I never actually bought. But like I said, I found out that discipline multiplies talent. So college running almost happened, but it didn't. I had opportunities at smaller D2 and D3 schools. Heidelberg was actually one that I had committed to, and they offered me a decent scholarship. My family did not make a lot of money, so I had a lot of grants. College seemed like this was actually going to happen. But once again, finances are real. And even with scholarships and grants, I couldn't afford it. My parents refused to co-sign the loans. At the time, I really resented them for that. But now, as a father, I understand completely. And I place no blame on them. In fact, it was probably smart that they didn't co-sign that loan. So what did I do? I decided to go to community college, work my way up for a year or two, and then go to a college where I can run cross country and be all like my other friends who are out having fun in college. Sadly, the community college had no cross country team. I worked 40 hours a week at McDonald's, and all the while I was taking 18 credit hours, and things just started to drift. Looking back at it, that wasn't a very smart choice. Running started to fade away. One day, after nearly failing a psychology test, I felt absolutely stuck. I remember walking down the hallway just feeling absolutely defeated, and I turned my head and saw an Army recruiter. Less than a month later, I was in basic combat training. In the Army, running matters. In basic, I dominated the 2-mile run. Nobody even came close to me. At Fort Bragg, where my first duty station was located at, that mattered even more. If anybody was ever stationed at Fort Bragg, you would understand that a short run for those guys was basically 4 or 5 miles. And I'll never forget, they took me out on what they called a new guy run. They basically gather up all the new privates that just got to the unit and take them on a run and see how they do. The senior guys take you out and basically test you. And if you fall out, your life gets significantly harder. But I stayed in the front. And just like that, I earned their respect. Then fast forward to 2005, we ended up deploying to Iraq. It was a tense time in those days. IEDs were everywhere. There was real fear going on. People were very much affected by that war. But even there, I found myself trying to run. I remember running around the tiny little base that I was on, that which couldn't have been bigger than 2 miles if you ran around the entire thing, and doing my best to go ahead and stay in shape. They actually held a half marathon on one of the larger bases, and the company commander thought it'd be a good idea, if anybody wanted to run it, that we would do a convoy, go out there so we can run that half marathon. So I found myself training for that. The base that I was on was, like I said, small, and I basically ran circles in the extreme heat all the time. I don't remember what my time was for that half marathon, but I do remember one, being very hot, dehydrated, and underprepared. But I remember why I loved running so much. I remembered that running gave me control, especially in a place that felt absolutely chaotic, like a young 19-year-old in Iraq. Years later, I ended up moving to multiple other duty stations. I met my wife in JBLM, Washington. I was much more focused on other things such as weightlifting and things of that nature. Running was kind of falling to the wayside. After some time, we left Fort Sill, Oklahoma for Hawaii. Dream duty station, something that honestly everybody loves to do and wants to get if you were ever stationed in the military. And there, something reignited. The culture there, if you've ever lived in Hawaii or been there for a significant period of time, the culture there is very active. People are always moving. They're always doing something. They're hiking, they're running, they're lifting. They are active. I mean, part of the motivation might be that you're going to be on the beach a lot with your shirt off and you don't want to look horrible. But me and my wife actually got into running together. Me, while I rediscovered my love there, my wife found a love there for running. And we found a community online. This was back in the Instagram days before Instagram was bought out by Facebook and didn't have 50 billion ads on it. And that little running community was honestly awesome. And I decided to go ahead and sign up for a half marathon. Now, I ran a few half marathons in between my time in Iraq and before this half marathon in Hawaii, but they were not trained for and very garbage ran, and they hurt a lot. Well, I decided to sign up for the Hibiscus Half Marathon in 2013, and I decided that I was going to train for it. I kicked my training up to another level. At this point, Google was finally around, so I can actually resource different things and learn a little bit more about running. But I was still stubborn. I refused to listen to coaches, and instead I was like, yeah, I can figure this out all on my own. Fast forward, I ran that half marathon, and honestly, I tried to look up my time. I couldn't find it online because I guess they just weren't keeping time for that half marathon during that period. But I still got my race bib, which I love holding on to. And I just remember when I crossed that finish line, how happy I was. I felt like I was back. I remember even crying, saying, this is it. I'm coming back to running, and this is never going to stop. So what was the next thing? Well, you guessed it, run a full marathon again. I had my hopes on a PR, and what I was training for was the 2013 Honolulu Marathon. I really believed that I could run about a 3:15 to a 3:30 pace. There were multiple other people that I would run with that consistently ran around that pace. I was keeping up with them. I was competitive with them. And I thought, hey, I was able to do it. Well, race day came. And if you've ever been to Hawaii, even in December, it is very hot. It can still be very humid. And if you've ever ran the Honolulu Marathon course, you will know that it is extremely hilly, especially with the fact that you are running up an extinct volcano, mainly Diamond Head. In that race, I did not fuel properly beforehand. I did not fuel basically at all during the race. I had no idea about chewable gummies and goos and all these other different ways to get carbs inside your body. I didn't hydrate during the race enough. And I ended up finishing with a very underwhelming 4:13:11. Yep, 4 hours, 13 minutes, and 11 seconds. A buddy that I trained with actually ran a 3:15 that day. And that one really, really stung because it wasn't that I couldn't run a marathon. It was because I knew I mismanaged it. Effort alone wasn't enough. I tried multiple other marathons throughout Hawaii, and I did not learn the lessons that I did previously. The next year, I ended up running injured. I developed a very severe case of plantar fasciitis that really derailed a lot of my training. I then signed up once I was healed for the North Shore Marathon. I went way too hard in a workout 2 days prior. Ended up with those DOMS, or delayed onset muscle soreness, during the race, and ended up hitting the wall around mile 20. And then my last year, I promised my wife that I would just run the marathon with her. So there were no PRs ever broken from that very first marathon I ran when I was 17 years old. After Hawaii, life started to speed up. I did run another marathon in Seattle, mainly the Rock and Roll Marathon in 2017. And once again, I decided to run with my wife to help her PR. So no PR for me that time. Other things started happening. Career progression in the Army, responsibilities grew, we had more moves. And from about 2016 to about 2024, distance running nearly disappeared from my life, with the exception of what I had to do in the military. I stayed in the gym, but endurance really started to fade away. All in all, I gained about 30 pounds over that time, inflating to almost 200 pounds. My back was deteriorating, bulging disc, degenerative disc disease, all these things that come with multiple years of combat military service and being in a combat job. And then in 2025, something devastating happened. I was put on a no running profile. Ironically, my back felt even worse though when I stopped running. Walking hurt, sitting hurt, standing hurt the worst, but running slowly actually made it feel better. So after shoulder surgery in August 2025, I asked my doctor to let me run again, albeit cautiously. He agreed. In November 2025, I committed to running the Oklahoma City Memorial Marathon in April of 2026. When I started back, I honestly couldn't even break 25 minutes in a 5K. My zone 2 pace was around 11 minutes, 30 seconds per mile. That was very humbling, especially for someone who used to run at decent distances. I started attributing it to, well, I'm an old man now, I'm 40, and what do you expect? I got all these issues. But I needed to stop comparing myself to my old 17-year-old form. I needed to get disciplined. So what did I do? I did what I knew I was able to do. Between mostly zone 2 training, building an aerobic base, the occasional tempo and threshold workout, and very smart progression. Just last week, I ended up running a 23-minute 5K. And while that is nowhere near my 17-minute 5Ks from high school, it was something that I was really proud of, especially considering the fact that in December, I ran a 5K and I was barely able to break 25 minutes. The fact that I was able to knock 2 minutes off my time in a matter of months really motivated me and pumped me up. And remember when I talked about my zone 2 pace when I first started off being like an 11:30, 11:40 minute mile? Well, now, just a few months later, my zone 2 pace is around a 9:45 per mile. All this at the age of 40, with disc issues, with military wear and tear on my body. And every time I PR, I decide to call them old man PRs, because some part of me feels like maybe I'm never going to get back down to where I was in my prime. But those old man PRs mean so much more to me now than my high school PRs did back then. I'm not sharing this because I think I'm special. I'm sharing it because improvement doesn't expire when you hit 40 years old or have some type of issue or gained a lot of weight. Injury doesn't automatically mean you're done. You don't have to destroy yourself to get better. All you need is consistency and patience. And you need to stop assuming that your best days are behind you. I honestly don't know if I am ever going to beat a 3:44 marathon ever again. I have the goal to do that. I don't know if I'm going to do it this year at the Oklahoma City Marathon or if I'm going to do it in the fall when I sign up for another marathon. But what I do know is this: I am not done improving. And you know what? As cheesy as this sounds, neither are you. You don't have to stop. Just keep going. Set a solid plan that you are actually able to achieve. Set yourself achievable goals and watch those goals start falling by the wayside as you get stronger and stronger and faster and faster. Anyways, thank you for listening to this story, and I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about my running journey on here for as long as I can. But thank you for listening, and I will see y'all on the next one.